Imagine boarding a flight and being told you don't belong. Not because of your ticket, not because of your actions, but because of your age, your skin color, and the assumptions others make about you. This is the reality Leah Campbell, a brilliant 17-year-old cardiac technician, faced on TransEdge Airlines Flight 261, an encounter that would ground the plane and ignite a movement for dignity and justice. How far would someone go to claim their rightful place? What does it take to remain calm when the world is shouting that you don't belong? And what happens when quiet strength meets powerful authority in the skies? Leah's story isn't just about one flight or one passenger. It's a mirror reflecting the systemic biases many endure, daily biases hidden beneath uniforms, policies, and the hum of jet engines. It's about courage, empathy, and the ripple effect one voice can create when it refuses to be silenced. Are you ready to witness a story of quiet resilience that challenges the skies themselves? Like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and join us as we take off into a journey where truth meets visibility. Leah Campbell paused at the entrance to the first-class cabin of TransEdge Airlines Flight 261 and took a deep breath. Her heart fluttered in her chest, but her shoulders stayed square. She lifted her head, scanned the cabin lights, and tried to steady the rhythm of her breathing. Everything felt sharper in that moment. The hiss of the air vents, the thrum of the engines, the ripple of tuxedoed passengers settling around her. Security. Remove this girl immediately. The voice sliced through the cabin. Leah looked up to see a flight attendant, Karen Slade, standing in the aisle. Fingers pinched on her headset. In her other hand, she clutched Leah's boarding pass. She obviously doesn't belong here. A hush fell. Every passenger glanced toward seat 1C. The woman in 1A arched an eyebrow. The couple in 1D exchanged confused whispers. Leah felt a bead of sweat at her hairline, but she refused to flinch. She was 17. She had earned her seat fair and square. Leah lifted her chin and spoke in a quiet voice, letting each word land carefully. "Good morning, ma'am. My name is Leah Campbell, and I have a valid first-class ticket for seat 1C. Karen Slade's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes flicked over Leah's travel-worn sneakers and then back to the boarding pass in her hand. "There must be a mistake," Karen said. Her voice was loud enough for the entire front cabin to hear. "This section is for paying customers, not charity cases." A ripple of discomfort traveled through the cabin. Passengers shifted in their seats. A server with a tray paused halfway across the aisle. The overhead bins clicked shut. Everyone waited. Leah's stomach clenched, but she kept her posture calm. She reached inside her backpack and withdrew a slim leather portfolio. She laid it on the seatback tray, opened it, and revealed 3 items: her TransEdge boarding pass, her Green Valley Memorial Hospital ID badge, and the small laminated card from the elite youth medical fellowship she had earned last spring. She set the documents neatly in Karen's outstretched hand. The cabin lights glinted off her gold medical ID bracelet. It bore her name and title, quietly proclaiming her credentials: trainee cardiac technician. Karen Slade stared, her jaw clenched. She tapped the boarding pass as if hoping the print would change. "Points glitch," she muttered. "System errors happen all the time. You must have used your points wrong." Leah folded her hands in her lap. Every eye remained on her. She imagined the caption Elena Myers was typing into her live stream: "Young black teen kicked out of first class within seconds." The viewer count would climb. But Leah did not panic. She remembered how her mother had taught her to handle high-pressure situations in the cardiac ward: steady voice, clear eyes, unwavering calm. "I'm not on points," Leah explained. "I paid for this ticket through a scholarship program I received for my medical work." Karen's cheeks fluttered with something like disbelief. Scholarship. For what Leah offered a calm smile. "I am part of the Elite Youth Medical Fellowship at Green Valley Memorial. Yesterday, I co-authored a paper on pediatric cardiac imaging. If you'd like to verify with the program director, I can provide a direct contact." At that, Elena's phone swiveled to capture Leah's profile. The livestream count jumped to 312 viewers. Comments scrolled in real time. "Whoa, is she serious? This is crazy." A calm voice approached from behind. It was Darren Wu, the ground operations supervisor. He held a tablet ready to scan Leah's boarding pass again. "Ms. Campbell, please allow me to confirm your ticket," he said, eyes respectful. Leah nodded and handed him the pass. She could feel the weight of every passenger's gaze. She wondered if they were judging her posture, her calm, or simply shocked at such blatant injustice. Darren scanned the code, his brow furrowed in concentration. The overhead reading light illuminated his screen. Leah held her breath. A few seconds felt like minutes. Finally, Darren looked up. "It is valid," he said quietly. "Fully paid, first class, seat 1C. A tremor of relief washed through Leah, but she contained it. She bit her lip and met Karen's glare head-on. The cabin remained painfully still. Karen slipped the documents back into Leah's hand. "This doesn't feel right," she said, her voice trembling now. She turned to the passengers. "Please, ignore this. We will sort it out on the ground." Leah tucked the portfolio under her arm and sank into the plush leather seat. She adjusted the headrest, unclipped her seatbelt, and felt the first flicker of oil calm sweep through her. She belonged here. She had earned this space. The flight attendant returned to her duties, but the look on her face said she hadn't given up. Karen Slade would not forget this moment, and neither would Leah, above the hum of preparation. Leah thought of her mother's voice again. "When they doubt you, hold your head high. Truth needs no volume." Leah closed her eyes briefly, feeling the gentle vibration of the jet engines through her bones. She opened them and gazed out the window at the tarmac below. The plane was almost full now. Overhead, announcement lights blinked. Cabin doors would close in moments. Yet, in the hush of first class, Leah felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. She was ready. Leah Campbell sat quietly in seat 1C as the tension around her thickened like humidity before a storm. The sharp words from Karen Slade still echoed in her mind. "Charity doesn't book first class." The sting of that accusation pressed against her skin, but Leah refused to let it define her. She folded her hands calmly and glanced around the first-class cabin. The passengers were watching, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, and a few with silent judgment. Behind her, the flight attendant who had called for security stood rigid near the galley, arms crossed like a sentinel. Karen's eyes occasionally flicked back toward Leah, sharp and watchful. Leah noticed the tightness around Karen's mouth and the flush creeping up her neck. Something about the woman's posture betrayed unease, but Leah knew Karen wouldn't back down easily. The soft chime of a phone breaking the silence came from seat 3A. Elena Myers, a young woman with an energetic smile, kept her phone pointed at Leah. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen as she narrated the scene in a hushed but urgent tone. "Y'all, you're not going to believe this. They're trying to kick this young woman out of first class just because she's black and looks young. She's got her boarding pass and everything." Leah caught Elena's eye and gave her a small nod. Not out of eagerness, but appreciation for having an ally. This was not just a fight for her seat. It was a fight for dignity and respect. Moments later, Darren Wu approached quietly, holding a tablet with the airline's verification system open. Darren was the ground operations supervisor. Leah had seen him around the terminal before, a tall man with kind eyes and an even temper. He glanced at Leah, then looked toward Karen, who gave a curt nod as if conceding some authority to him. "Ms. Campbell," Darren said softly, "I need to verify your boarding pass again, just to be sure." Leah extended her hand without hesitation and passed over her leather portfolio with the documents neatly arranged inside. Darren scanned the QR code on her boarding pass, his brow knitting as he compared information. Around the cabin, whispers started again, growing louder. Some passengers exchanged knowing looks. Others pulled out their phones, sensing a story unfolding live in front of them. Elena's livestream viewers jumped to over 500 and climbing fast. Leah felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. Briefly, she wasn't used to being watched like this, but she reminded herself that visibility could be power if wielded wisely. She sat upright and met Darren's eyes, steady and composed. After a few tense moments, Darren nodded. "The ticket is valid, fully paid, first-class seat 1C, Ms. Campbell." A ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin, some passengers quietly applauding. Elena whispered into her phone, "We got confirmation. This is real." Karen Slade's jaw tightened visibly. Her confidence was beginning to crack. "There has to be some mistake," she muttered. "I've worked here for 12 years. I know a fake ticket when I see one." Leah looked at Karen calmly. "There is no mistake." Karen scoffed. "You expect me to believe you paid for this seat? With what money you're a kid?" The words cut deeper than any shouted insult Leah had heard before. Yet she did not rise to anger. Instead, she closed her eyes briefly and recalled her mother's voice. "Stay calm. Speak your truth without shouting." Leah opened her eyes and met Karen's gaze with quiet power. "I am 17. Yes. But yesterday, I was the youngest fellow ever accepted into the Elite Youth Medical Fellowship at Green Valley Memorial Hospital. This ticket was purchased through a scholarship program supporting that work." The cabin was completely silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning and distant conversations muffled behind the closed cockpit door. Elena's phone camera captured Leah's face perfectly poised. "You're making history," Elena whispered into the mic, her voice soft but awestruck. Leah's heart pounded. It was the first time in this ordeal she felt truly seen, not as a troublemaker, but as a young woman whose work mattered. Darren cleared his throat. "Ms. Campbell, if you want, I can contact the program director to verify your fellowship status." Leah nodded. "Please do." Karen's eyes darted anxiously between Darren and Leah. She opened her mouth to say something but closed it again. The last vestiges of certainty fled her face. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "Flight 261 is cleared for departure in 10 minutes. Please prepare for pushback," Karen muttered under her breath. "This isn't over." Leah's phone buzzed. She glanced down to see a text from Dr. Malcolm Bennett, her godfather and chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board. I'm monitoring. Call if you need. Leah felt a rush of warmth. She was not alone. Around her, the cabin began to settle. Drinks were served. Passengers whispered in low tones, their curiosity tempered by the sudden realization that Leah belonged here. Leah pulled out her medical textbook, a worn volume on cardiac anatomy she had been reading during layovers. Her fingers traced the edge of the pages as she centered herself. She could feel the weight of every gaze, every judgment, but she refused to shrink. This was her moment not only to claim a seat, but to challenge a system that doubted her worth because of her age and race. Karen paced near the galley, muttering complaints into her headset. Darren stayed by Leah's side, offering quiet reassurances. Elena continued to stream, her voice softening with admiration. Leah closed her eyes briefly. She pictured the countless hours of study and sacrifice it had taken to get here. She remembered the long nights in the hospital, the sterile smell of the ward, the hopeful faces of the children she worked to save. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Dr. Bennett. Be calm. Be strong. We will fix this. Leah opened her eyes and exhaled slowly. The plane was filling. The engines hummed steadily. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The cabin air was thick with tension as Leah Campbell remained seated in 1C, her hands resting lightly on the armrests. Karen Slade's eyes never left her, sharp and suspicious. The flight attendant's expression was a mix of disbelief and something more guarded, as if she were trying to convince herself of an alternate reality where Leah did not belong in first class. Leah's gaze was steady. She refused to let anger or frustration cloud her judgment. The experience of being judged on appearance and age was painfully familiar, but she had long learned to carry herself with quiet strength. That strength had brought her this far. Karen took a step closer, lowering her voice, though her words were still audible throughout the cabin. Ma'am, I need to see that ID again. Please. Leah nodded and slowly opened her leather portfolio once more. Inside were 3 cards neatly arranged, the TransEdge Airlines boarding pass, her Green Valley Memorial Hospital identification badge, and her laminated Elite Youth Medical Fellowship membership card. She passed them to Karen with a calm and deliberate motion. The flight attendant scrutinized each one as if they were riddles written in a foreign tongue. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly as she held the hospital badge, a glossy plastic card featuring Leah's photograph and title Trainee Cardiac Technician. Passengers around her exchanged glances. Elena Myers continued to record, the glow from her phone illuminating her intent expression. Her voice was low but persistent, narrating the scene to her growing audience. This is unbelievable, y'all, Elena whispered. They're trying to say this girl is faking all this. A murmur spread through the cabin as the live stream hit 700 viewers, climbing rapidly. Karen's voice sharpened. You expect me to believe a kid like you is part of that program? You think you can just waltz into first class with some fake cards? Leah felt her pulse quicken, but maintained her composure. She met Karen's gaze directly. No, ma'am, this is not fake. The cabin was silent, all eyes fixed on the exchange. Karen's voice dropped to a near whisper, still loud enough to carry. You've got some nerve. She glanced at the other flight attendants nearby, who looked equally uncertain. Leah swallowed a flicker of frustration and reached into the portfolio once more, pulling out a slim black card that bore the TransEdge Airlines Elite membership seal and her name embossed in gold lettering. "I've flown with TransEdge for years," Leah said softly. "My family and I have elite status through the scholarship program. This isn't just about one flight." Karen's lips twitched in what might have been a scowl or the hint of a smile. "You're lucky the gate supervisor hasn't been called yet." Leah took a slow breath, the familiar calm settling over her. She reached for her phone and glanced at the screen. A text from Dr. Malcolm Bennett, her godfather and chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board, read, "Protocol activated. Stand by." Her fingers hovered briefly over a contact named NPIC Emergency Line, the National Pediatric Innovation Council's direct legal hotline. She hadn't dialed yet, but the option was there if needed. Karen's eyes flicked toward Leah's phone and narrowed. "What are you doing on that thing?" she demanded. Leah lowered the device and met her gaze. "I'm preparing to verify my credentials with the program director." Karen scoffed. "You think a call will save you here?" Leah didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked around the cabin, noting the tense faces of fellow passengers. Some were clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. Others, like Elena, watched with quiet admiration. Suddenly, the flight attendant's headset crackled to life. Karen's voice was clipped. "Ground control, this is Karen Slade in first class. We have a passenger causing a disturbance, requesting supervisor assistance." Leah's eyes narrowed slightly. "Disturbance," she echoed silently. In truth, she had been nothing but composed. Darren Wu, the ground operations supervisor, appeared in the aisle and approached Leah's seat. He carried a tablet and wore an expression that balanced authority and caution. "Ms. Campbell, I understand there's some confusion," Darren said gently. "I'll verify your boarding details and credentials. Let's keep this calm." "All right." Leah nodded. "Thank you." Darren scanned Leah's boarding pass once again and tapped through several screens on his tablet. "Your ticket is valid," he confirmed. "First class, seat 1C, fully paid." Karen's face flushed with irritation, but she said nothing. Elena's phone buzzed with incoming comments from the live stream. "Everyone's watching," she whispered to Leah. This could change everything. Leah felt a sudden rush of determination. She knew this moment was about more than just her seat. It was about challenging assumptions that had followed her all her life about race, youth, and worthiness. "Ms. Slade," Leah said quietly, "I am here because I earned this seat, because I've worked hard, because I've contributed meaningfully to medicine and aviation safety." Karen blinked, surprised by the conviction in Leah's voice. Darren gestured toward the flight attendant. "Let's hold off on any further action until I finish verification on the ground. Please." The captain's voice came over the intercom, steady and calm. "Flight 261 is cleared for departure in 8 minutes. Please secure your belongings." Passengers began preparing for takeoff, but the atmosphere in first class was far from relaxed. Leah closed her eyes briefly and recalled her mother's words from childhood. "Power is not in volume. It is in the strength to stand firm when all else doubts you." Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Dr. Bennett. "Legal team is standing by. Documentation is underway." Leah glanced around and saw Karen's stance soften imperceptibly. The flight attendant's earlier certainty had faded, replaced by a flicker of doubt. The live stream viewers had surpassed 1,000 now. Comments poured in. "This is real. She belongs there. How is this still happening?" Elena's whispered commentary filled the cabin softly. These moments matter. This is the difference between being seen and being erased. Leah breathed steadily. She was ready for whatever came next. Leah sat quietly, the low murmur of the cabin swirling around her like a soft storm. The words Karen Slade had thrown at her echoed inside her mind, sharp and unrelenting. Charity doesn't book first class. Those words stung not because they were new, but because they exposed the raw, underlying bias Leah had learned to navigate every day. She closed her eyes briefly and found herself transported to a quiet moment at home weeks ago. Her mother's voice came through the fog of memory, steady and unwavering. Leah, when people try to diminish you, don't shout, don't flinch, stand still, be calm. Power doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes the quietest person is the one everyone should listen to. Leah swallowed, her throat tight but her resolve hardening. This was her moment to embody those words. Her phone buzzed softly on the tray table. She glanced down at the screen. A message from Dr. Malcolm Bennett, her godfather and chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board. Read, remember your training. Keep calm. We have your back. Leah's fingers hovered over a contact labeled NPIC emergency line, the direct legal hotline of the National Pediatric Innovation Council. She took a deep breath, but did not dial. Not yet. Karen Slade was watching her, eyes narrowed, lips pressed tight. The flight attendant's pride seemed to chafe against the reality she faced. Karen was no stranger to authority or responsibility. 12 years of service had taught her to spot trouble early, to act decisively. But this young woman's calm defied every expectation Karen had. Step into the aisle. Please, a new voice called out firmly. Leah looked up to see two TSA officers stepping aboard the plane. One was a tall, composed woman with a badge shining on her jacket. The other was a middle-aged man with a kind but serious face. The cabin grew tense again. Passengers shifted uneasily. The live stream held steady at over 1,500 viewers. Leah rose slowly, gathering her belongings with practiced care. She kept her eyes forward, her breathing even. The flight attendant, Karen, followed close behind, whispering, "We need to check your ID again. This is procedure." Leah understood the dance, the scripted moves meant to intimidate. But she would not be disarmed. Not here. She stepped into the aisle and turned to face the officers. "Good morning," she said softly. "I'm Leah Campbell, trainee cardiac technician at Green Valley Memorial Hospital. Here is my identification." She extended her hands, revealing her hospital ID badge, medical license, driver's license, and boarding pass, all neatly arranged and perfectly authentic. Officer Martinez, the woman with the badge, examined each carefully. She scanned Leah's badge with a small device, then passed it to her partner, Officer Chen, who ran the medical license through the system. The silence stretched. The hum of the engines grew louder in Leah's ears. Chen looked up, surprised. License valid. Active medical license for Leah Elizabeth Campbell, age 17, board certified in pediatric cardiac imaging. The words were almost a whisper, but in that moment they felt like a roar. Karen Slade's face drained of color. The confident authority she'd wielded moments ago melted into disbelief. Passengers whispered amongst themselves, a low wave of support rising. Elena Myers leaned into her phone's microphone. "This is real. No lies." She's everything she says she is, and yet, her voice trailed off, thick with emotion. Leah caught the look on Karen's face, equal parts shame and frustration. She could feel the weight of years of assumptions crashing down in an instant. "Miss Slade," Officer Martinez said gently, "I apologize for the confusion. Your passenger's identification appears to be legitimate." Karen's lips trembled as she tried to respond but found no words. Leah took a small step forward and spoke softly but clearly. "Miss Slade, would you like me to recite the medical licensing requirements for cardiac imaging, or perhaps demonstrate my knowledge of FAA Regulation 382.7 regarding discrimination in air travel?" The cabin held its breath. Elena's livestream was now approaching 2,000 viewers. Comments flooded the screen. Truth, grace, strength. Leah continued. Regulation 382.7 states that airlines cannot discriminate against passengers based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, or ancestry. Violations carry federal penalties starting at $55,000 per incident. The words hung in the air like a challenge and a promise. Officer Martinez stepped back, signaling that the matter was now beyond his immediate jurisdiction. This was civil rights territory. Suddenly, Karen's radio crackled to life. "Karen, corporate office is on line 1. You need to take the call immediately." Karen's eyes darted nervously. The timing was suspicious. Leah had not made any calls visible to the crew, yet someone was watching closely. Karen hesitated. "I can't take a call right now," she replied tensely. A firm voice crackled again. "Take the call. Karen, this is not a request." Darren Wu, the ground supervisor, approached quickly and whispered, "Karen, please, take the call." But Leah was done waiting. Her thumb pressed the contact named Board Emergency Line. The number was special, a direct connection to TransEdge Airlines' board of directors. The call connected on the first ring. A calm but authoritative female voice answered Williams Foundation Emergency Line. "This is Rebecca. How can I help you?" "Ms. Campbell," Leah's voice was steady, clear. "Rebecca, authorization code Bravo 77. I need to speak with Dr. Malcolm Bennett." The cabin was silent. Everyone heard. The live stream paused its narration, the tension thick enough to taste. Rebecca's voice came through the speaker again. "Please hold for Dr. Bennett." Leah's heart beat steadily. The moment was heavy with consequence. Dr. Malcolm Bennett's voice finally filled the cabin, calm and measured but unmistakably powerful. "Leah, are you safe?" "I am, Uncle Malcolm," Leah replied simply. "But we have a situation on Flight 261. I'm already aware," Dr. Bennett answered. "Rebecca activated monitoring protocols the moment you called. Is your treatment respectful now?" Leah glanced at Karen, whose face was now pale and shaken. "It is evolving, Uncle Malcolm," Leah said, "but we are far from finished." Dr. Bennett's voice filled every corner of the cabin. "This is Malcolm Bennett, chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board. To whom am I speaking?" Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Darren was the first to respond. "Mr. Bennett, this is Ground Supervisor Darren Wu, employee number 48392. Sir, there has been a misunderstanding regarding Ms. Campbell's credentials and boarding." "Darren," Dr. Bennett replied, "I'm familiar with your record. Karen Slade, are you there?" Karen finally found her voice, trembling. "Yes, sir. K. Slade, employee number 7543, hired March 20th, 2010. Karen, Dr. Bennett said evenly, I want you to explain why my goddaughter is being harassed on one of our flights." The words fell like thunder. The cabin erupted in whispers. The livestream exploded with comments chairman's goddaughter, the airline's own board family. Leah reached into her portfolio and produced a black TransEdge Airlines Lifetime Elite Status card, the kind reserved for board members and their families. "Dr. Bennett continued, "Ms. Campbell has saved lives during medical emergencies aboard our flights. She has personally trained crews in cardiac crisis management. She represents the future of aviation medicine." Officer Martinez took a step back. This was beyond passenger dispute. This was corporate accountability. Leah looked directly at Karen. "I don't want you to lose your job. I want you to understand why this was wrong." Karen's tears fell. "I made terrible assumptions. I'm sorry." The livestream viewer count hit 4,000. Comments praised Leah's grace under pressure. This was not revenge. It was justice with mercy. Dr. Bennett concluded, "Karen Slade is suspended pending mandatory bias training to be personally overseen by Ms. Campbell. Darren Wu will join her." Leah smiled softly. She knew the fight was only beginning, but today had changed everything. The cabin was quieter now, but the tension had not dissipated. Leah Campbell remained in her seat, her posture calm but alert. The weight of what had just unfolded settled heavily in the air. Passengers whispered among themselves, exchanging looks filled with a mix of surprise, admiration, and lingering doubt. Flight attendant Karen Slade had retreated to a corner near the galley, her face pale and eyes downcast. Darren Wu stood nearby, his expression one of conflicted professionalism. The two TSA officers, Martinez and Chen, were discreetly reviewing documents, their brows furrowed in concentration. Elena Myers, still holding her phone, whispered softly, "Viewers are up to 1,900. This is getting bigger than anyone expected." Leah's heart beat steadily, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She knew this was only the beginning. The airport authorities would be waiting when the plane landed. Questions would be asked. The story would spread far beyond this cabin. Her phone vibrated again. A text from Dr. Malcolm Bennett read, "Legal team is reviewing all materials. Stay calm. We will take care of everything." Leah let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She opened her leather portfolio and pulled out additional documents, her driver's license, medical license, and a letter of recommendation from the hospital's chief of surgery. Each piece of paper bore her name and credentials, meticulously maintained and perfectly valid. Officer Martinez approached Leah cautiously. "Ms. Campbell, I need to ask a few more questions," she said gently. Leah nodded. "Of course." Martinez began with routine inquiries about travel plans and identification verification. But as the conversation progressed, it became clear this was more than a standard security check. "Why do you believe you were targeted?" Martinez asked softly. Leah hesitated. The words formed slowly but clearly. "Because of who I am. Because of my age, my race, and the assumptions people make when they see me. I've faced this all my life, but I refuse to let it silence me." Martinez listened intently, her expression thoughtful. "You're stronger than most adults I know." Leah managed a small smile. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Darren Wu was busy on his phone, searching the internet for information about Leah Campbell. His fingers paused on a news article titled, "Teen Prodigy Revolutionizes Pediatric Cardiac Imaging." The headline was accompanied by a photo of Leah in a hospital lab coat, a radiant smile on her face. Darren's eyes widened. He showed the screen to Karen Slade, who looked away quickly. "This can't be right," Karen muttered. "She's just a kid." Darren shook his head. "She's more than that. We were wrong." As the aircraft began its slow taxi to the runway, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a ground hold order from corporate. Please remain seated. We will update you shortly." Passengers murmured, glancing around in confusion. The delay was unexpected, and the mood shifted from irritation to curiosity as whispers of the unfolding incident spread. Leah's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Dr. Bennett. She answered on speaker, allowing the cabin to hear. "Leah, are you safe?" His voice was calm but firm. "I am Uncle Malcolm. We have some complications, but I'm fine." "Good. The Foundation's legal team is activated. We're documenting everything. I want you to stay strong." Leah nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I will." Karen Slade stood nearby, tears glistening in her eyes. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her conscience. Leah's voice broke the silence once more. "This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has ever been judged unfairly, every passenger who has felt unsafe or unwelcome because of assumptions they never earned." Elena's livestream microphone picked up Leah's words, broadcasting them to thousands watching online. The cabin fell silent, the power of Leah's message settling over everyone like a gentle tide. Officer Chen approached Karen and whispered something. Karen nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Darren Wu addressed the cabin. "TransEdge Airlines is committed to treating every passenger with dignity and respect. We are reviewing our policies and training procedures to ensure incidents like this do not happen again." Applause broke out quietly, first from a few passengers, then swelling as more joined in. Leah felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what change looked like, not loud protests or angry confrontations, but steady, undeniable truth. The plane remained grounded, but the momentum for reform was already in motion. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the plane remained grounded on the tarmac, its engines humming softly like a low heartbeat. Leah Campbell sat quietly in seat 1C, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and resolve settling into her bones. The events of the past hour felt surreal, a whirlwind of suspicion, proof, and revelation swirling together like clouds outside the window. Flight attendant Karen Slade sat apart near the galley, her usual composed facade cracked by fatigue and regret. Darren Wu moved through the cabin, quietly consulting his tablet and speaking with crew members in hushed tones. The TSA officers, Martinez and Chen, remained near Leah's seat, their posture relaxed but alert. Leah's phone buzzed again. She glanced down to see a text from Dr. Malcolm Bennett, her godfather and chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board. Verification complete, license and fellowship confirmed, legal and corporate teams fully briefed. Leah exhaled slowly, her pulse steadying. Despite the ordeal, her identity and integrity had been validated. The truth was undeniable. Officer Martinez approached Leah, his expression softening. "Ms. Campbell, I apologize for any distress caused. Your identification and credentials are legitimate. We will ensure you are treated with the respect you deserve." Leah offered a small, gracious smile. "Thank you." Karen Slade listened from a distance, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. The weight of her earlier accusations pressed heavily on her conscience. 12 years in the industry had taught her many lessons, but this moment was unlike any other. It was a harsh reckoning with her own assumptions and biases. Passengers began to relax, the air slowly shifting from suspicion to empathy. Elena Myers's live stream had swelled to nearly 2,000 viewers. Comments flooded the feed, praising Leah's composure and calling for systemic change. Leah knew this was just the beginning. The story would ripple far beyond Flight 261, challenging not only the airline's policies, but broader societal attitudes toward race, youth, and worthiness. Karen finally approached Leah's seat, her voice trembling. "Ms. Campbell, I want to apologize. I made terrible assumptions. I was wrong." Leah met her gaze steadily. "Thank you for saying that." Karen wiped her eyes quickly, then nodded toward Darren Wu. "I'm ready to accept any training or guidance you think is necessary." Darren smiled gently. "That's a good start." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are awaiting clearance to depart shortly. We apologize for the delay." Leah closed her eyes briefly and reflected on everything that had transpired. This moment was painful, but necessary. Change rarely came without discomfort. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Dr. Bennett. "Corporate is drafting a formal statement. The legal team is preparing a settlement offer. You are not alone in this." Leah typed a quick reply. "Thank you. I want to use any settlement funds to support others facing discrimination." The response was swift-noted and supported. Elena leaned close and whispered, "You're inspiring so many people. Your story is becoming a beacon." Leah nodded, feeling a mix of humility and responsibility. This was not about her alone. It was about every young person who had been doubted, disrespected, or dismissed. The live stream continued, capturing the evolving scene with quiet reverence. Passengers shared their own experiences of bias, creating a chorus of voices demanding dignity and respect. Leah's thoughts turned inward. She remembered the countless nights spent studying under fluorescent lights, the sacrifices her family had made, and the barriers she had faced simply because of her age and skin color. She realized that the real victory was not in proving herself to Karen or the airline, but in shining a light on the deep-rooted prejudices that so many endured daily. Her phone chimed softly, a reminder of the conference call scheduled for tomorrow with airline executives and advocacy groups. Leah was invited to serve as a consultant for the new Dignity in Aviation initiative. She felt a quiet surge of hope. This was an opportunity to turn personal pain into systemic change, to build a future where no passenger would have to question their right to be treated with respect. The engines roared to life as the captain announced, "We have clearance for departure. Please fasten your seatbelts." Leah secured her seatbelt and looked around the cabin. Faces were still lingering on her, but now, with newfound respect and understanding, she smiled softly, knowing this flight was more than just a journey through the sky. It was a flight toward justice, dignity, and transformation. The atmosphere inside the cabin had shifted. The once tense faces of passengers softened into expressions of curiosity and admiration. Leah Campbell sat upright in the seat 1C, her calm demeanor now a beacon of strength for everyone aboard TransEdge Airlines Flight 261. The lingering tension between her and Karen Slade had settled into an uneasy truce, but the real storm was far from over. Darren Wu, the ground operations supervisor, was pacing quietly near the galley. He held his phone tightly. Scrolling through pages of search results, the screen showed news headlines and profiles about Leah's stories of achievement and groundbreaking work in pediatric cardiac imaging. 17-year-old Leah Campbell breaks records. One headline read, another detailed her recent fellowship acceptance, praising her as a prodigy in medical technology. Darren's expression grew serious as he looked up at Karen, who was standing beside him, her arms folded defensively. "You know who her godfather is?" Darren asked quietly. Karen's eyes widened, her composure faltering for the first time. Who she whispered. "Dr. Malcolm Bennett," Darren replied, chairman of the Federal Aviation Medical Advisory Board and a major figure in both the medical and aviation industries. Karen swallowed hard. The name carried weight and influence far beyond anything she had anticipated when she tried to question Leah's legitimacy. Leah felt a surge of mixed emotions hearing the name. She had always been proud of her godfather's accomplishments but had never used his status as a shield. Today was about her own merit and truth. Darren put down his phone and took a deep breath. "He's been monitoring the situation since you called the emergency line." Elena Myers, still holding her phone, whispered, "Viewers are over 2,500 now. This is blowing up." Leah glanced at Elena's screen. Comments flooded in from around the country. Supportive messages, calls for justice, and praise for Leah's resilience. A sudden announcement came over the cabin speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. Due to an ongoing security and passenger verification situation, we have received a ground stop order from corporate. We ask all passengers to remain seated while this matter is resolved." A murmur ran through the cabin. Passengers exchanged looks, some with concern, others with anticipation. Leah's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID displayed Dr. Bennett's name. She answered on speaker, her voice steady. "Leah, are you safe?" His voice was calm, authoritative. "I am, Uncle Malcolm. We're handling the situation here, but it's escalating. I'm here for you," he said firmly. "I'm contacting corporate and legal teams right now. They will intervene swiftly." Leah took a deep breath, grateful for his presence even from afar. The call was short, but powerful, a reminder that she was not alone in this fight. Karen Slade watched from the galley, her face pale and drawn. The weight of her earlier accusations pressed down on her, and the realization of the consequences now fully settled in. Darren approached Leah again, lowering his voice. "Mr. Bennett has just called the operations center. Corporate is fully engaged. They want this resolved immediately." Leah nodded, the steady calm she cultivated now tinged with anticipation. The truth was finally breaking through the walls of suspicion and bias. Minutes later, a corporate representative arrived on the plane. She introduced herself as Rebecca Fields, head of passenger relations. Rebecca's presence was calm but commanding. "Ms. Campbell," Rebecca began, addressing Leah, "we are deeply sorry for what happened today. This is not reflective of TransEdge Airlines' values or policies." Leah inclined her head slightly. "Thank you. It is important to me that this is not just about my experience, but about preventing similar incidents for others." Rebecca smiled warmly. "You're right. That is why we are launching a new initiative focused on dignity and respect in air travel. We would like to invite you to serve as a consultant and spokesperson." The cabin filled with quiet gasps and murmurs. Passengers began to applaud softly, some even rising to their feet. Elena captured the moment on her live stream. her voice thick with emotion. "You're witnessing history, folks. A teenager not just standing her ground but leading the way toward change." Leah felt the weight of the moment, but also the lightness of hope. This was what she had been working toward, a future where respect and fairness were standard, not exceptions. As the announcement ended, the cabin crew began preparations for departure. Karen Slade approached Leah quietly. "I want to say I am sorry," she whispered. "I was wrong. I hope you can forgive me." Leah met Karen's eyes and nodded. Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. The plane's engines hummed to life as the captain's voice once again filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have clearance for takeoff. Thank you for your patience and understanding." Leah settled into her seat, looking out the window as the runway lights stretched out before them. The journey ahead was no longer just across the sky, but toward a new horizon of justice and dignity. The plane was still grounded on the tarmac, the engines humming low and steady as if holding its breath. Inside the first-class cabin, an air of anticipation lingered. Leah Campbell sat poised, the weight of recent events pressing on her but never breaking her calm. Flight attendant Karen Slade stood near the galley, pale and quiet, her earlier confidence replaced by a growing sense of unease. Darren Wu moved about discreetly, coordinating with ground staff via radio and smartphone. The TSA officers, Martinez and Chen, kept a watchful eye, their demeanor professional but wary. Suddenly, Leah's phone lit up again. The screen displayed a name that resonated with power: Dr. Malcolm Bennett. Without hesitation, she answered the call, placing it on speaker so the entire cabin could hear. "Leah, are you safe, Doctor?" Bennett's voice was firm yet reassuring. "I am, Uncle Malcolm," Leah replied clearly, "but the situation is ongoing. We need intervention." "Understood. Corporate has been alerted. I'm on my way to coordinate with the airline's leadership. Keep steady." The voice of authority filled the cabin, commanding respect and quieting the whispers. At that moment, the plane's intercom crackled. "This is Robert Wilson, chairman of TransEdge Airlines Board of Directors. To whom am I speaking?" The passengers exchanged stunned looks. Leah took a steady breath and answered, "Mr. Wilson, this is Leah Campbell." A hush fell over the cabin as the chairman's voice projected through the speakers. "Ms. Campbell, I am deeply sorry for the ordeal you have faced. You have my full support." Karen Slade's face drained of color. She stepped back, no longer the figure of control, but of surrender. Darren Wu stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, the ground team and security personnel were following protocol but underestimated the situation. We await your guidance." The chairman's voice was calm and commanding. "This matter will be handled swiftly and transparently. Ms. Campbell, your courage is commendable. Let this be the catalyst for change within our airline and beyond." Leah felt a surge of emotion but held it in check. This was more than personal vindication. It was an opportunity to spark systemic reform. The live stream had swelled to over 3,000 viewers. Elena Myers's voice was steady yet impassioned. "This is the moment justice begins." Passengers began applauding quietly, some standing in support. The atmosphere shifted from tension to solidarity. The chairman continued, "I am suspending Ms. Slade, effective immediately pending a full investigation and mandatory bias training. Mr. Wu will oversee the implementation of new policies ensuring such incidents never recur." Karen's eyes welled with tears. She nodded, accepting responsibility. "Ms. Campbell," the chairman said, "we invite you to join us as a consultant for our new Passenger Dignity Initiative. Your insights will be invaluable." Leah nodded, a quiet smile touching her lips. She knew the road ahead was long, but now illuminated by hope. The captain's voice interrupted gently. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received clearance for departure. Please prepare for takeoff." Leah settled into her seat, the city lights below twinkling like stars. She felt the weight of history on her shoulders and the promise of change in her heart. The cabin buzzed with quiet conversation as the news from the board chairman settled into the minds of every passenger. Leah Campbell remained calm in her seat 1C, the soft hum of the engines now a steady rhythm beneath the lingering tension and hope. She was no longer just a passenger, she had become a symbol, a catalyst for change that extended far beyond this flight. Flight attendant Karen Slade sat quietly nearby, her posture subdued but attentive. She had spent the last hour reflecting deeply on her actions and the assumptions she had made. The weight of responsibility pressed on her, but Leah had offered something unexpected: forgiveness and an opportunity to learn rather than punishment. Darren Wu approached Leah with a gentle smile. "Ms. Campbell, corporate has asked me to let you know that your willingness to help with training and reform is greatly appreciated." Leah nodded. "Thank you. Change needs to come from understanding, not fear." Passengers began settling back into their routines as the flight prepared for takeoff. Elena Myers lowered her phone and gave Leah an encouraging nod. "You've got a whole crowd rooting for you." Leah smiled softly. She was tired, but a quiet strength kept her steady. Her phone buzzed again with a message from Dr. Malcolm Bennett. "Remember, you are not just finishing a flight, you're starting a movement." A steward handed Leah a glass of water. She accepted it gratefully and took a slow sip, feeling the cool liquid calm her nerves. The captain's voice came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are cleared for takeoff. Please fasten your seat belts and prepare for departure." The engines roared to life as the plane taxied toward the runway. Leah gazed out the window, watching the lights blur into streaks as the aircraft accelerated. The city faded behind them, replaced by the dark expanse of the night sky. Her thoughts drifted to the countless passengers who had witnessed the ordeal, people from different walks of life, united by a shared experience of confronting injustice. She hoped her calm and resolve had given them courage, that they would carry the message forward. Karen approached Leah once more, her eyes sincere and humbled. "Ms. Campbell, I want to thank you for your patience, your grace, and for helping me see my mistakes." Leah looked at her and nodded. "We all have room to grow. Today was a lesson for all of us." The flight attendants moved through the cabin, their demeanor noticeably softer. The atmosphere was one of quiet respect and new beginnings. Elena's livestream had reached over 4,000 viewers by now. Comments flowed in messages of support, stories of similar experiences, and calls for systemic change. Leah reached into her bag and pulled out her medical textbook. She flipped to a page on cardiac emergency protocols, the familiar diagrams and notes offering a comfort and anchor amid the chaos of the day. She knew her work was far from over. This flight was a beginning, not an end. As the plane climbed higher, Leah closed her eyes briefly. The steady hum of the engines lulled her into a reflective calm. Her mind wandered to the possibilities ahead, the new training programs, the app-based discrimination reporting system in development, the policies that would shape the future of air travel. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from the airline's CEO. Patricia Stone. Thank you for your courage and leadership. We are committed to making real change. Leah smiled faintly. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but she was ready. She returned to her book, the words and images grounding her in purpose. The flight 261 was no longer just a journey across miles of sky. It was a passage through a moment in history, a flight toward justice, dignity, and hope for all who dared to dream of a better world. The cabin of TransEdge Airlines Flight 261 had settled into a calm rhythm as the plane soared through the night sky. Leah Campbell sat quietly in seat 1C, her mind a mixture of fatigue and purpose. The ordeal she had faced earlier felt like a distant storm, though its echoes still resonated deeply within her. This flight had become more than a journey. It was the beginning of something transformative. Flight attendant Karen Slade moved through the cabin with a new humility. Gone was the sharpness in her voice, replaced by a quiet determination to learn and grow. She had agreed to participate in the airline's new bias training program, a process she now embraced with sincerity. Darren Wu, the ground operations supervisor, had shifted roles. He was now an advocate for the airline's diversity and inclusion initiative, helping to implement the changes sparked by Leah's courage. Elena Myers kept her phone tucked away, but her eyes shone with the knowledge that the story they had witnessed was spreading far beyond the walls of the aircraft. Suddenly, Leah's phone buzzed with a notification from the airline. She opened it to find an official announcement. TransEdge Airlines was launching the Dignity Protocol, a new app-based system allowing passengers to report incidents of discrimination or bias in real time directly to corporate leadership. The app's design was sleek and accessible, built to ensure that no passenger would ever feel powerless again. Reports would be verified swiftly, and responses coordinated within 24 hours. The airline promised transparency, accountability, and a commitment to cultural competency. Leah felt a surge of hope. This was the kind of systemic change she had long dreamed about, a tool to empower, educate, and transform. Later, during a scheduled video conference with airline executives and civil rights organizations, Leah spoke candidly about her experiences. Her voice was steady but passionate as she outlined recommendations for training modules focusing on unconscious bias, de-escalation techniques, and passenger dignity. "We must remember," Leah said, "that discrimination is often unconscious. The goal is not to shame, but to educate to interrupt bias before it manifests in harmful actions." The airline agreed to partner with the National Pediatric Innovation Council and several civil rights groups to develop comprehensive training materials. Leah was invited to serve as the lead consultant, a role she accepted with quiet pride. The program was designed to be more than mandatory compliance. It would include immersive scenarios, role-playing, and measurable outcomes to track real behavioral change rather than just attendance. Karen Slade was among the first employees enrolled. Her journey from skeptic to advocate became a case study featured in training sessions across the company. She spoke openly about her mistakes, her growth, and the power of empathy. Meanwhile, Darren Wu coordinated with regional managers to implement bias interruption protocols for supervisory staff. These protocols required supervisors to pause, assess assumptions, and verify facts before taking action in potentially discriminatory situations. Passengers began to notice the change. Customer satisfaction scores improved. Reports of discrimination declined significantly. The airline's commitment to dignity and respect was becoming a competitive advantage, not just a moral imperative. Leah continued her surgical residency while dedicating time to her new role. She traveled frequently to speak at conferences and collaborate with other industries adopting similar protocols. Her efforts caught the attention of the Federal Aviation Administration, which began considering federal requirements for bias reporting across all airlines. The ripple effect was undeniable. The Dignity Protocol app had been downloaded over 800,000 times within 6 months. Passengers across the country felt safer, more respected, and empowered. Leah reflected on the journey from that fateful flight to this moment of progress. The initial confrontation, the call to the board, and the collective efforts that followed had sparked a revolution in passenger dignity. She knew the work was far from over. Discrimination was a deeply rooted social issue that extended beyond air travel. But every step forward mattered. One evening, Leah stood before a room filled with airline executives, medical professionals, and civil rights advocates. Her voice rang clear as she addressed the crowd. "Every discrimination incident is like a cardiac arrest in our social system," she said. "We don't blame the patient for the failure. We fix the system that caused it." Her words resonated deeply. Applause filled the room. Leah smiled softly, knowing that through quiet courage and unwavering truth, she had helped turn personal pain into systemic reform. The flight had touched down hours ago, but its legacy continued to soar. Months had passed since the events on Flight 261, but the impact was still unfolding. Leah Campbell found herself standing at a podium in a large conference hall, surrounded by airline executives, medical professionals, civil rights advocates, and journalists. The room was filled with expectant faces, eager to hear from the young woman whose calm courage had sparked a movement. Leah's voice was steady and clear as she addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for being here today. I'm honored to share this moment with you." She paused briefly, allowing her words to settle. What happened on Flight 261 was not just about one passenger or one flight. It was a reflection of systemic biases that affect millions every day. The audience listened intently as Leah recounted the incident, the suspicion, the challenge, the calm determination to prove her rightful place. She spoke not with anger, but with a quiet strength that commanded respect. "Bias is often unconscious," Leah explained. "It operates beneath the surface, shaping our actions and decisions without us realizing it. That is why education and awareness are crucial." Leah described the Dignity Protocol, the app that allowed passengers to report discrimination in real time, and the comprehensive training programs developed in partnership with the National Pediatric Innovation Council and civil rights organizations. She highlighted the progress made: a significant drop in discrimination reports, improved customer satisfaction, and a shift in airline culture toward inclusivity and respect. Karen Slade sat in the front row, her expression one of humility and growth. Leah acknowledged her presence with a nod. Karen's journey from doubt to advocacy is a testament to the power of education and empathy. The room erupted in applause. Leah's words resonated deeply. She spoke of the importance of accountability, not as punishment, but as a path to understanding and change. "We all have biases," she said. The difference lies in whether we choose to confront and correct them. After the conference, Leah mingled with attendees. She answered questions, shared her vision for the future, and listened to stories of discrimination and hope from others. A young woman approached her hesitantly. "Leah, your story gave me courage. I faced similar challenges traveling alone. Knowing someone stood up for dignity means everything." Leah smiled warmly. "Thank you. It is our shared stories that create lasting change." Backstage, Darren Wu joined Leah with a proud smile. "You did great today. You're making a difference." Leah nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the thrill of progress. The fight was ongoing, but now it was shared. Later that evening, Leah sat alone in her apartment, reflecting on the journey, the moments of fear and uncertainty, the strength she had drawn from her family, especially her godfather, Dr. Malcolm Bennett, and the support of allies like Elena Myers and Darren Wu. Her phone buzzed with a message from Patricia Stone, CEO of TransEdge Airlines. "Your leadership is transforming our industry. Thank you for being the change." Leah typed a reply. "Together, we will create a future where dignity is the norm, not the exception." She closed her eyes briefly, letting the words sink in. Her journey was far from over, but she was no longer just a passenger in her own story. She was a leader, a voice, a force for justice. The flight that had grounded the plane had also launched a movement, and Leah Campbell was at its heart. The flight descended steadily toward its destination, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting golden hues across the clouds. Leah Campbell sat quietly by the window in seat 1C, watching the world unfold beneath the plane. The city lights began to sparkle like distant stars, welcoming the aircraft home. The cabin was calm. Passengers settled comfortably after the turbulence of earlier hours. Yet, beneath the surface, a transformation had taken place, one that would ripple far beyond the confines of this flight. Leah reflected on the journey from that first confrontation with Karen Slade to the systemic changes that had since taken root. She thought of the airline's new Dignity Protocol app, the comprehensive bias training programs, and the increasing awareness spreading through corporate boardrooms and passenger lounges alike. Her phone buzzed softly on the tray table. She glanced down to see a message from her godfather. "Dr. Malcolm Bennett Board meeting tomorrow. Full approval for all proposed changes. Proud of you, kiddo." Leah smiled, feeling the warmth of support that had buoyed her through this entire ordeal. She knew the fight for justice was far from over, but now it had allies at the highest levels. As the plane touched down smoothly on the runway, the captain's voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Los Angeles. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. Thank you for flying TransEdge Airlines." Passengers began to gather their belongings, their faces reflecting relief and renewed hope. Leah carefully packed her leather portfolio and medical textbook, a symbol of her dual-life healer and advocate. The flight attendants moved through the aisles with renewed purpose. Karen Slade, no longer the figure of confrontation but of redemption, approached Leah gently. "Dr. Campbell," she said softly, "I know I don't deserve to ask, but would you be willing to personally conduct my bias training?" Leah looked at Karen, really looked at her. In those eyes, she saw fear, shame, but also a genuine desire to change, a spark of hope. "Yes," Leah replied simply. "We all have more to learn." 6 months later, Leah found herself standing before a room of airline employees at TransEdge's training facility in Dallas. She wore a badge identifying her as a bias training coordinator, a role she had embraced fully. "My name is Leah Campbell," she began, "and I faced discrimination simply because of assumptions people made about my age and race." The room was silent, the air heavy with the weight of her words. These were not abstract concepts, but real stories, raw and honest, about unconscious bias and its impact on everyday lives. Leah shared her experience on Flight 261, the lessons learned, and the importance of recognizing bias before it turns into discrimination. The Dignity Protocol app has received thousands of reports in the past 6 months, Leah explained. Each report is taken seriously and addressed within 24 hours. She described how the airline's culture was shifting, how employees were beginning to see passengers not as challenges, but as people deserving respect. Karen Slade was there too, now a mentor and advocate, sharing her own journey of growth and accountability. Leah's efforts extended beyond the airline industry. Hospitals, retail chains, and transportation services began adopting modified versions of the bias reporting system and training programs. Her work had become a beacon, inspiring others to speak up and demand dignity. Elena Myers had transformed her accidental livestream into a career in social justice filmmaking, capturing stories of discrimination and resilience across the nation. Leah's Foundation, created in memory of Flight 261, provided legal support for victims of transportation discrimination and funded research on bias in medical settings. During a recent medical conference, Leah addressed a room of healthcare professionals. "Medical emergencies don't discriminate," she said. "A heart attack looks the same regardless of race, age, or appearance. Our protocols must reflect that truth." Her voice carried the weight of experience and hope, a call to action that resonated deeply. Back on a plane, Leah sat quietly, watching a young black girl board first class without hesitation or question. The girl's smile mirrored Leah's own determination years before. Justice, Leah knew, was not always loud. Sometimes it whispered, and when it did, the whole world listened. Leah Campbell's journey reminds us all of the power and pain behind every act of discrimination. It shows us how deep-rooted biases can cloud judgment and deny dignity, but also how courage, compassion, and truth can break through even the thickest clouds of injustice. This story is a call to recognize the quiet battles fought daily by those who look different or are underestimated. It is a call to stand with them, to speak up, and to demand change not just in the skies but in every corner of our world. As Leah's experience transformed an entire airline, imagine what happens when each of us refuses to accept unfair treatment. Together, we can create spaces where respect is the rule, not the exception. If this story moved you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Stay with us for more real-life stories of courage and change, because every voice deserves to be heard, and every story has the power to transform. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your hearts ready.